Hello and welcome back to Good Germs Off-Road Adventures, and welcome back into the shop. We've got Billy Badass torn down a little bit more since the last time you saw him after we finished all the other work and all the other videos. Well, we're going to do another one, and we've got him torn down a bit. As you can see, we've got the tie rods pulled out, gas tanks out, handlebars, well, they're just laying face down right there, and the steering stem is missing. That can only mean one thing. Billy Badass, he's getting power steering. Stick around. You know, it gets quite hot here in the shop in the summertime, and I know I've shown it to you on video, 106, 110, 115 degrees. We managed to snag ourselves up a very large evaporative cooler for the shop, and well, I've got it on low, so it's not too noisy. You might still pick up some wind noise here on the microphone, even though it's got a windsock on it right there. Yeah, check it out. Look at that thing. Like I said, I've got it on low right now, and it is keeping the shop at 68 degrees, and it's already like 85 outside. It's supposed to be like 96 today. We'll see how hot it gets anyway. Let's get into the project and see what we've got here. So like I mentioned just less than a minute ago, we're going to put power steering in Billy Badass because, you know, these Sportsmans, if you've ever ridden them, especially the older ones, no power steering, they can take a toll on the elbows, especially when you're old like me. And well, I figured we've given it some more noise, perhaps some more power. Let's make it a little easier to, you know, drive, ride, whatever you do on a ATV, quad, four-wheeler. So let's look at the kit. Went with the SuperATV kit because they've got a pretty nice kit that they offer. We've obviously got some instructions. We don't need those. Just kidding. We really do need those. Okay. Okay, there's some paper here. We really don't need this paper, so we'll get rid of that. All right. So in the kit, we have a replacement for the steering stem that the handlebars mounts to. Now this is just the upper half of it. This mounts to the top of the actual power steering motor unit. This is the ECU for it. And it's got all these nice watertight connection points on it, supposedly. The instructions, I did take a preview, and it does say to make sure they're not loose. Not sure why they would be, but they seem okay to me. Oh, it's got their name stamped in it. That's nifty. We have a very heavy mounting bracket for the ECU. This is the bracket that the motor mounts to, along with the, well, motor. These are some more brackets that it mounts to, some bearing for the bottom of the thing, of the steering, you know, where the steering, it needs a bearing, and we'll get to it later. Some hardware in the form of nuts and bolts. Some more mounting bracketry. Very nicely put together wiring harness. And taped in here, don't know if oh, here's some more nuts and bolts. Groovy. And I don't know if I can get it out because it's kind of held into the styrofoam. See if I can get it out of here with one hand. Oh yeah, oh, it's heavy. If you're ever wondering where all the extra weight comes from in these newer machines, this is part of it. And here is our actual power steering motor, and it is heavy. Let's set it over here. And then they give us a little bit of wiring doodads. We may have some better ones. We may not have some better ones. Look, I really don't know. We should have better ones than these. If we do, we'll use them. If not, we'll just use these. Okay. The instructions are nice because they're in color. And the photographs, they're pretty good. Shows all the bits and the parts. This kit, wow, that cooler over there is blowing all the wind. Anyway, this kit came with the 380 watt motor, the bigger motor, which is nice. Now, of course, it starts with telling you how to, what to take off, and everything's got to come off. I didn't film. Okay, well, the instruction book is just a blowing. Let's put something on it. There we go. So I didn't film, obviously, taking everything apart because, well, when we did the carburetor, we took the gas tank off and everything, and getting the steering stem out, past that, not too difficult. Well, not too complicated. Difficult's a whole nother story. Obviously it has a bracket here that it bolts to. The difficult bit was down there. And what made that difficult is you've got this thing right here. Well, don't look at me. Look at what... okay. You've got this... Oh, that's my feet you're looking at. That's lovely. All right, you've got that little flange right there with a hole on either side. And that bolts down to that thing I just showed you on the quad there. And it's just a little carriage bolt from the top and a nut from the bottom. The problem is that there's not a lot of room in there to get a wrench, ratchet, socket, whatever. There's just not a lot of room under there. Pretty standard size. It was like 1/2 inch. Pretty certain it was 1/2 inch. Polaris didn't do any of their trickery with making it metric. Anyway, it was just access. It's right above the front diff gear housing, and that just made that difficult to get out. Other than that, it was just those two bolts there, and then of course the bit on the top that holds it to the bulkhead, if you will. I'll just call it bulkhead, that holds it there. So with it fully apart, let's see what assembly step it wants us to do first. Okay, so before I got started, I went ahead and took the hardware over to the toolbox over there so I could figure out what size tools to get. So we've got all the hardware laid out here. There's some M10 bolts, some M8s, a couple of M6s that were not in the description. There's some nuts. So after checking all those out, we have a selection here of 10 millimeter, 13 millimeter, and 14 millimeter wrenches, ratcheting wrenches. If we end up needing sockets, we'll grab those too, but I always like to, whenever I can at least, I like to try to get the tools together that I'm going to need, at least so I'm not running back and forth so many times, even though it's, just right there. That doesn't mean I want to go back and forth 100 times. 98 times is fine, but 100 times is just too many. Okay. Instructions say the first thing to do is put that plate on the motor with whatever that says, M10, the big ones, 3 of them, and it gives you 2 examples. 400 model, Sportsman 400, maybe someday. Anyway, 570, 800 models, or 700 has a chassis that's like the 800, so that's the example we're going to use, and it shows you how to clock that. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I've already set it on there. So we're going to grab 3 of those. Now I'm not going to tighten these, just in case, once we get it set in there, we have to scoot it around a little bit. So I'm just going to put them in there with my fingers. That one's got a gap. Why? I don't know. Why didn't that one want to go all the way? Am I scared? I don't know. It should go in all the way. All right, let's just give them a little bit of a how you doing. not too tight. Just want to hold it in place. And oh, that turns easy to go the rest of the way in. Okay. And you know, I may have mentioned it once or twice before, but these ratcheting wrenches are available at any store that sells them. Okay, with that on there, now it says to do, well, we just did that. Install lower shaft, lower shaft, lower shaft. Oh, that's this guy. Install it into the stock location. Oh, with stock hardware, so we need to get the bolts that put that into the thing. But those are the stock bolts. Like I said, they're just little carriage bolts with a nylon locking nut on it. I'm going to see if I can set the camera up to get an image of what we're doing, because like I said, it's down there, and I've got to figure out how to make the camera show you that. I'll be right back. Well, I'm hoping this setup's going to work. I've got a light. I've got my GoPro aimed down in the hole down there. You know, that hole. So hopefully that'll work. Well, we're going to have to switch back and forth between a couple of different cameras, because now that I've got the GoPro set up on the quad there, I don't want to take it on and off every time I've got to talk to you. So, sure. All right, so this part can only really go one direction. Don't put it that way because, well, you're not going to be able to set the motor down on top of it. So we're just going to set that up, line it with the holes there, and well, do our best to install this thing. Okay, let's get the, well, I don't need the wrench just yet. Let's get the nut started, which, you know, I'm having to do the creepy thing under here. You can probably, not creepy thing. Why did I say creepy thing? I don't know. Anyway, you can see I've got to sneak my hand up under this part of the frame, and it is on that diff. So let's go to the other side and get that one started. The wheels on my roller cart are noisy. Oh, one of them's getting ready to fall off. That's great. Okay, then on this side, it's the same thing. We put that there. And, of course, this lower radiator hose. Is it lower radiator hose? Is it upper? I don't know. This radiator hose is in the way. So we have to see if we can sneak up under there. Yeah. Oh, nope. Come on. Just start on the threads. That'll make me really happy. There it goes. You know, we're having to do the easy does with the fingers, you know, just doing this. Anyway. Okay. And then, I'm trying to remember how I got it out of here. I think I used on this side a little socket and a ratchet, now that I'm remembering. So let's go to the other side and do that real quick with this guy, and then we'll come back and do a little socket and a ratchet. Oh yeah, and you get all of about 2 inches of swing, which is, you know, more than enough. And you can't get it from this side. Nope. So you get it from this side, and you just live with having not a lot of swing. But it's better than no swing. I don't know if you noticed, but the bearing housing that this thing sits in, it's not straight. It's got a little curve to it, so this can flex around a little bit if it needs to, like that. So we're gonna leave this nice and loose for now, and we'll come back and tighten those later once we get the motor stabbed into this and it's nice and straight. Well, let's, I guess, see what's next on our list of to-dos to do the thing, to install the thing. Install lower shaft to stop. We just did that. Reinstall tie rods to lower shaft with stock hardware. Do I really want to do that right now? Probably. It's probably telling me to do it in that order for a reason, so let's just do that. I'm just going to do that real quick. I think you've seen me install them before on the last video. I'm just going to do that real quick, knock it out. Okay then. All right. You can see the tie rods are reinstalled. So now on to the next step. Let's see what that is. Install motor onto lower shaft, secure with provided hardware. Secure what? No. We have to put the hardware in first. And that takes some bolts. And the hardware are these, mounting brackets. We need to put these in next. Okay. All right, so those brackets go nicely into that hole there and that hole there, almost like it was meant to be that way from the factory. All right, and they go in a this way kind of direction. And we'll put the bolt through the hole and the nut in the bottom. And I'm talking like this for no particular reason. Got some good long threads there. Let's tighten that up, but not all the way, because this does have a little groove so it can move in and out as needed. So we'll make it snug but movable. And this here is the 13 millimeter size. And I'm almost wondering if I can get an actual socket up here on the top, because I can hold the bottom nut with an ratchet. Can I get a socket on that? This is fine for now. Making all sorts of racket. There we go. That'll do. Do the same on the other side, catch back up to you. There we go. Okay. Now for the motor. I think this is actually what's next. I got to figure out how that motor's going to set in there. All right, I've got my hardware. And we've got our motor. And it goes in a this way sort of direction. Yep, there's tons of room in here. Nope. Okay. I don't think I did that right. Let's try it again. Maybe we need to put this in. Oh. Maybe it sneaks in from the side. Hold on. It does not sneak in from the side. But I think I was trying to do it incorrectly. Let's just lay it there. Now that it's there, can we pivot it? Pivot. Pivot. Stuff's in the way. Okay, let's go to the other side. Okay. It's just the engine that's in the way. Should have took that out. That would have made it easier. Okay. Now, this is in the way, and somehow these splines need to go into the splines. Oh, they did. Okay. Well, oddly, we're done. No, we're not done, but we're a lot closer than we were a minute ago. Does it need to go on there any further? Like, does it need to push down more? Yep. I think that bolt that's in there has got to come out. Sure it does. Can I get to that bolt? That bolt. I didn't say anything about that bolt having to come out, but I'm pretty certain it does. If I turn it that way, I might be able to get to it. It looks like 10, 12 something millimeter. Anyway, let's get it. Y'all will be impressed with me. I've had this 10mm socket, oh, at least 25 years, and I've never lost it. Also, referencing what bolt this is the bolt that should secure the motor to, you know, the splines. If you see a groove right here, I think this bolt just runs right across that groove so the motor can't move up and down. But on the bottom part, I didn't see in the instructions anywhere that said to take that out, but it makes sense to me because I think it's not letting the motor set all the way down into the groove. Yep, exactly, just like that. Okay, let's just set the stuff down here so it can fall and we'll lose it. See, I've already dropped the washer. Get it, it ran away, I got it. Okay. Well, I've got a tray right here, why don't I use that? Okay, perfect. Well, now that the motor is set in here, we can use our hardware to fasten it to the brackets that we just installed. And then after we do that, we can fasten the brackets we installed to the frame. Probably still going to wait on that until we get the steering stem up and attached, and then tighten it all up. Yeah. And this brake line is in the way. That's okay. Drop the bolt. Oh, but it's right there. It didn't go far. Great. Got it, got it, got it. Give it to me. Oh, dropped it again. Don't make me get the magnet. You know I'll get it. See, just talk to it dirty and you'll get it back. Okay. And then we'll put the nut on that side. Drop the nut. There we go. We'll just run that on until the nylon catches it and stop. Good. And there's 2 on each side, so we'll go ahead and do the next one. There it goes. Okay. So that's that side started. Let's go to the other side. Not exactly easy in this particular part, but it almost feels like I got a half a thread on it. Do I? I don't know. Can I test that? I need a socket to go from this side. I don't even know if that'll reach. Well, I do. I do have some thread on it. Nice. Okay. Perfect. Okay, I've made sure that the steering is as straight as it can be. And the pictures showed this with that thing pointing forward. Let me shove this down on there. This has got a little bit of a turn to it, so let me turn it so at least it looks straight from the top, and let me have a look at the wheels. They are definitely not straight. One tooth to the left. Straighten this. That looks a lot straighter. Coming around to the front of the quad. Yeah, they look pretty straight. Close enough. Okay. So now that that's on there, we'll go ahead. Well, you can't see now because you're down there. Let's angle you up. So we're going to attach it here now. Put a little bit of grease in the bushing. We'll attach that, and then we'll start snugging the rest of this up. So our bushing bits, looks like it's going to go right about there. And these are sticky now. Okay. Let's tighten those up real quick. This is original hardware, so this is 1/2 inch. All right, let's wipe this grease off here because we only need it where we need it, and right there is not where we need it. But, so from top to bottom, we are loosely installed, but now that everything is put together up here, this is the only place that can't move when it's, you know, the holes are just holes, they can't move. Everything else down can move, so now we're going to go ahead and make sure everything gets lined up and tightened. I probably should put the bolt that holds the splines together on that side before I get too far, and I'll do it on the steering stem as well. All right, well, I have all of the mechanical assembly fully installed. Everything's tightened up. Let's have a look at it and let's see how we did. Starting from the top, you can see the motor, everything's installed. I have the motor clocked in a nice position where it's not close to hitting anything. All right, so if we look down here, this is on the left side. If you're standing behind the quad, the right side, if you're standing in front of the quad, you know what I mean. You can see everything in here is attached. The tie rods, all that looks good. Bracketry is all tightened up. And then on this side, which is the passenger side, but it's the other side if you're not on the other side, and you know what I mean. Again, bracketry is all tightened up, looks good. Everything's clocked in a way that should not interfere. And a quick test, we don't have the handlebars on, but we can see that it does move freely with no binding, which is lovely. So now I think it's time we have to install all of the electronic bits. I need to cut off all the zip ties I have holding things out of the way before I forget that they're there. And we'll just keep on doing the thing. Okay, so what it's telling us to do to mount the bracket that holds the ECU on is there's a splash guard right here on this side of the quad that has to come off. Well, the bolts have to come off. I think the splash guard stays, and then this just kind of goes on with it. But it gives instructions for if your machine has a splash guard and also if it does not. Well, we have a splash guard, but it's not the same as the one that they show in the instructions. And let me show you what I'm on about here. So in the instructions, you can see this very straight splash guard with 2 screws holding it on there. However, when you look at ours, it's a curvy one with 1 screw here, and it's got like a little lip that's going under the frame here to hold it in position. And then the hole here, and that hole does line up, but it's what it says to do is there's a couple of M6 screws that they've provided to go in these holes places to put, you know, to hang this thing here. But when I take the M6 screw that they provided, it's too small for the hole. It just kind of goes in and out of the hole. It's too small for the hole, it just goes in and out of the hole. So I grabbed an M8 screw, because there are extra M8 screws as well, and it's too big for the hole. So I think what I'm going to go ahead and do, because the bracket, the holes are big enough to run an M8 screw through, they're actually quite large holes, is I'm going to drop that bolt on the floor right there and have to pick it up later. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my tap and die set, and I think I'm going to tap a hole there for an M8, and I can use one of the extra M8 screws that it came with, and that should work out pretty good. All right. Well, first, I think I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to take this off first, just because I need to take the bolt off anyway, and it's sort of in the way. Okay. Groovy. And yeah, Polaris likes to just drill themselves a pilot hole, and then they just kind of thread these things in. And actually, that bolt would fit there, but we're not going to bother. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and try to tap this up to an M8. This hole may not be big enough, I don't know. Shock's in the way. hole's not quite big enough. It looks like that's going all the way in. Let's take it out. Give it to me. Oh yeah. Now let's take this M8 screw here. Yep, like it was meant to be, although it might be a little on the long side. Nope. That will work perfectly. If you listen carefully, sometimes you can hear my genius. Oh, I lied when I said these holes were big enough for M8s. I'm going to have to drill that out on the bracket. Lovely. Well, as you can see, I've had to drill that out so our M8 bolt fits in there. Should be fine. Sometimes you just have to improvise a bit when you're doing these projects. And finally our shield, which I really don't know what this shield is supposed to shield you from. There we go. Shield reinstalled, mounting plate installed. Okay, let's put this back where it was, which was there. And now we get to mount our ECU. And these also use the M8 screws that came with the kit. Uno, two, C, and Quattro. And Quattro doesn't want to start. Well, why not? Loosen the other ones up a little bit. Let it wiggle. Yep. Okay, tighten those up real quick. Pretty good. And here we go. There we go. I'm not exactly sure how I feel about the location of this thing. I mean, it's right there where I'm thinking stuff from the tire might get flung up on it. You know, it's facing down, so it's got cooling fins on it, I guess, because they get hot. I don't know. It's got all the plugs and harnesses here, but you know, it's right here by the shock, and you've got the wheel that's going to be flinging stuff. And I mean, obviously that location must work. There's other places they could have put it, but this bracket is nice and sturdy. That's nice. I mean, I guess I shouldn't worry about it. They've been making this kit for quite a long time with this bracket for these machines here, so I'm sure it's fine. Well, what we have left to do now is the you know, the electronics, the wiring. We've done the electronics. We need to do the wiring now. And for that, I'm going to need to go back to the instructions and figure out what it says. We've got lots of tools. Let's just push all that to the side. These, I think, are just extras that came with it. The instructions say whatever extra hardware you have to discard it. Well, we're not doing that. You can see I've got a bunch of bolts here and bits from all the quads, and that's where we found the bolt we needed to fix the booger up that we made on the bolt that we ruined. Just saying, there's a reason we don't throw out our extra bolts. Anyway, let's see what kind of mess we have here. So we have this end. There's an LED light right there. I don't know where you're supposed to do that, but it tells you if it's working or not, if it's got a problem. There's a couple of plugs, fuse, a good amount of wiring. Let's stretch it out. I don't know what that does. Positive and negative, I'm pretty sure I know what those do. And then another wire. I think this wire goes to our speedometer, so the unit can adjust the amount of power steering it's going to apply based on your speed. I do know positive and negative, battery, positive and ground. We're going to do a chassis ground, and instead of direct to the battery, I'm actually going to hook it to the other end of that wire, which is where the starter solenoid is, just because it's what I feel like doing. And yeah. Oh, there you are. Yeah. There's also wiring on the thing itself. It's got some harnesses that probably plug directly into the ECU as well, so we have to figure that out and how we're going to route everything in a nice and safe way. All right, well, I've gone ahead and finished up the wiring to the best of my abilities, and I'll show you exactly, what I did. If you may recall, that was a pretty good sized wiring harness, so I'm going to start, I guess, at the power end of it, the positive and the ground. So very discreetly, I snuck the positive wire, you can see it kind of right there, tied it into here, and I just did a self-tapper on the ground and I put it right here. I could have done it on one of the other places that already has a ground, but they were the same length and I really didn't want to cut it or cut the loom that was surrounding the wire, so I just did that. I think that'll work pretty good. Okay, so you can't really see it, but I routed the wire loom behind and around the air box, zip tied it to the frame. Here you go, you can actually see a little bit more of it here. Continued to zip tie it to the frame, and then followed the same path as the throttle cable. And my excess, I actually just snuck up here and zip tied it in place in this spot. Seemed like a good location. If it's not, then I'll fix that later. Hanging down, we've got the fuse is sticking out kind of right there, so we can get to it when we need to. All these wires are zip tied up out of the way and as far away from the exhaust as I can possibly get it. Here is the little LED light. That's to tell you if you've got a problem or not. I'm not really sure if the tires are going to hit that or not. I guess we'll have to see when we get there, and if so, then the rest of these will probably have to tuck up. Actually, I may just go ahead and tuck those up kind of more out of the way anyway. Okay, coming up top, you remember I talked about a white wire, didn't know what it was. Well, that's a key to on power, and under here you've got a couple of options. There's this one here that's keyed on power with a female spade bit, and this male spade bit snuck right in there easy. You put a little bit of tape on there just to protect it. And then the other wire, the speedo cable wire, now they want you to cut the white wire there and solder in this wire, but I wanted to be able to disconnect it, so I use these connectors. They're not the greatest, I know, but there's not a lot of power running through this, and it just kind of crimps on around the wire you want, and then this part plugs in, and you notice I've got two different colors because I think these wires are two different gauges, and I didn't want to cut that white wire, but that should work. And that should be all of the connections. So now let's hook up the power and the ground on the battery, turn the key on, and see if we have power steering. There we go. Well, all that's left to do now is turn the key and see what happens. Before we do that, though, let's turn the handlebars and we can see what that feels like. So the handlebars are not too hard to turn right now. You can definitely feel the resistance of the electric motor in there, but it's all smooth, no binding. One thing I noticed, though, when I put the handlebars back on, I feel like it's about 2 inches taller. I'm not sure that it is, but it really seems to look like it is. And for me riding it, and that's probably okay, and my son's tall, it's probably okay as well. And I have a theory, and the theory is that this kit is really made for the next generation chassis that has a little bit more suspension. I think it's just a theory. It's probably not true. I guess I could take the original stem and run it down there and have a look. Well, I'm curious now. Let's grab the original stem and and see if that's any different. It might just all be in my head. So if I hold this to where, oh, see it is. I think there is, well, maybe there's not a difference. Well, let's measure. Let's lay this here. Look, I know we're all excited to see if we have power steering or not, and I'm just kind of delaying it for no good reason. Okay, if we measure here from the top of the block to the bottom, it's like 4 3/4 inches. It's not like 4 3/4 inches, it's exactly 4 3/4 inches. But let's check out the factory one. And, looking at the handlebar mount where it mounts on the factory stem, it's not as strong as that new one anyway. To the top, where that would be, it's about 3/4 inch. So apparently 3/4 inch to me looks like 2 inches. That's fine. Anyway, let's, what do you say we see if we have the power steering? Shall we? Okay, let's turn the key on. Oh, realize we should probably hook the speedo cable back up to the speedo in here. Not that we're going anywhere, but something tells me that that's probably necessary. Well, how come I can't? Okay. There we go. Like I said, something tells me that that was probably necessary to make everything work. So let's turn the key back on. The quad lit up. The LED light up? I don't know. But I can feel the motor. I can definitely feel the difference. This is much, much easier to turn it. And I can feel the helper. So that's, like you can see, I'm just kind of flipping this with my finger here, just kind of tossing that. Now let's turn it off. And it's not anywhere near as easy. I mean, I can move it easily because it's not on the ground on the tires, but there is a difference. Let's see with the LED light. It's supposed to light up for like 1 second. There we go, it's on, it's off. And apparently, according to the instructions, it said if it does anything other than that, then I gotta call them because there's a problem. I'm thinking there's not a problem. And yeah, I definitely feel the assistance there, much easier. Well, I'd say that's job done. Look, we've got a lot of reassembly to do. We've got to put the gas tank back in it. It's over there on the stack of tires. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and put the gas tank back on there, and I think I'm going to go ahead and slap the wheels and tires on it, set it on the ground, and let's see if we can really sense the assist on the steering. Okay, well, we've got Billy set back down on the ground for the first time in what seems like a long time. And now with the weight, you can definitely feel it's actually really hard to steer the front wheels. Of course, it's turned off. Let's turn the ignition on, and now let's see. Oh, yes. Yes. Billy's got power steering. Lovely. Well, it's about a week later, and let me see if I can explain why. Just a few minutes ago, or however long ago it was, I mentioned, let's put the gas tank back on and put it on the ground and test out the power steering unit. But you may have noticed the gas tank wasn't actually on, and well, it's because it doesn't fit anymore with the motor. The fuel lines are in the way of the motor, and fuel lines are important. But let me show you, what I'm talking about. Okay, you can see how close the bottom of the fuel tank is, about 2 millimeters above the motor, and that's fine. I don't expect them to be touching, but to the end of my finger you can see the barbs hanging out for the fuel lines, and they're only about 1/8 of an inch, at least the main fuel line nipple thing that hangs down is only about 1/8 of an inch above, you know, the motor for the power steering. So what that means is when you have the fuel lines on it, the fuel tank will not set all the way down in there. And I thought about it for a couple of days. How am I going to make this work? And I've come up with a solution now. Right now, the fuel tank is sitting in there all the way, and it can be mounted in its current position. It's fine. But before, it wouldn't even come close. Like I said, I was thinking about what can I do to make that fit? And I think I've come up with a solution. Since without the fuel lines, the barbed part of the fittings there, they do clear the motor. I was thinking, can we do a 90-degree on there? You see, these come straight down, and I'm wondering if they can do a 90-degree. We can run the fuel line, I think, towards the back, which will get it away from all the stuff. Will that work and clear? My thinking is, sure. So I went on to the Amazon website and I found these. Now for reference, the threaded part of this is a 1/8 MIP thread. I know it's bigger than 1/8 of an inch. I don't know why that is. I actually took the fittings to Home Depot so I could make sure I got the right thread pitch. Now, of course, they didn't sell these. And then the barbed is a 5/16 hose barb. Brass should be fine. The old ones are brass, should be great. So this should work. And I'll link the parts, from the Amazon, in the description in case any of you are going to try to do this on a rig like this where it just doesn't fit because it's not the right chassis for this unit. Reminder, this unit is for the model year 0509 chassis, not older. Anyway, so my thinking is this is going to fit. And let me pull the old fittings out and show you why I think it's going to fit. So I have already had these out once. Like I said, I took it to Home Depot, the fitting to Home Depot, to try to match up the threads. And there's no metal inside the tank for that to thread into. It actually just threads into the plastic. So this isn't obviously what it looks like. This is the main fuel one. It actually has this pushed into the top, and it's not even really glued in. It was literally just pushed into the top, kind of like that. And I just pulled it apart, and then this came out. Obviously, it's got the little screen, and the reserve was strictly a screen that fit into the top of that fitting. But I'm going to lay this on the bench so we know the plastic went to the top of the nut there for the tank. And if we line this up and do the same, you can see why in my mind this is probably going to fit. So it fits now with this not touching the top of the motor, but since we kicked it off 90 degrees, before it even gets that far, we're going to run the hose off this way. In my mind, that should work. So I'm going to go ahead and install these onto the tank, but before I do, I think I'm going to address this heat shielding because it's kind of hanging off, and I'm thinking we need to put some new stuff on there. That's probably not going to last much longer. So just like magic, you can see we have all new heat shielding on here, and well, you can buy the original one. They're still available. I already had this roll, which has quite a bit on it, and this is actually probably better than the factory aluminum that was on there anyway. But I did my best to cover up all the spots the original covered up, probably a little bit and then some. Cut out the square or rectangle where the original was cut out there for the fittings, and that should work just fine. I guess now we'll just try to install the fittings into the gas tank right there, and that'll be just dandy. So these is just metal, these is just great English. Anyway, these are just threading into the plastic. You probably can't see it on the camera, but those are just threaded holes in the actual plastic fuel tank. And I don't really want to run any risk of them leaking. Ooh, that just fell right there. Like I was saying, I know I test fitted this. Come on now, there we go. I don't want to run the risk of these leaking. However, so I was going to wrap them in some yellow Teflon, which is for gas, petroleum, propane, liquid, whatever. But these actually feel like they're snugging up quite nice in there, so I think we'll probably be okay not taping it. The originals weren't taped, nor were there O-rings. There's nothing on there. So if these didn't leak, I'm going to assume these won't leak. I got to take that back out because we need to put these screens and things in them. Okay, so when I took this apart, I made a mental note that the hole closest to the side of the tank was for the main fuel. So we're just going to see if that'll shove in here the way it did in the old one, and it did perfectly. So now we're just going to stick it in here. It's a little bit of a fight to get it in there. There we go. And now we can just thread this in. And if you remember, I mentioned, I think I want these pointing maybe back into the side. Let's see if we can get one more turn on that. And that should leave enough room to get our hose and hose clamp, we'll assume. For the other one, it's the same thing. We're just going to shove our screen down in here. Some of that fight to get it to go in there is the inside of these holes. There's a little bit of flashing left on the inside of the fuel tank at the top of these threads. Anyway. Now these thread in pretty nicely. That one's at a bit more of an angle. I'm going to try that angle in the once we put it in the quad there and see that that works. Okay, let's see. Is this a two-hand job? Can I? Oh no, there we go. Dropped right in there. It's lined up. It's setting all the way down on the mounts, nice and easy. Let's go around the other side and have a look and see the fittings clear. Well, there you can see they actually clear by quite a bit. I don't know if the angle or the direction they're pointing is going to work for the fuel lines, but we'll go on the other side and well, we'll just see. All right, well now you can see we have the gas tank. It's mounted. Everything is put back together. We have reattached all the fuel lines, obviously rerouted that one and that one. Surprisingly, didn't have to get anything longer. Actually, just had to shorten this one just a skosh. And then, of course, reattach everything. But the most important bit is making sure it cleared, you know, the motor that's down there to run the power steering. So let's have a look there as well. Okay, so now we're in here and you can see our new grommets or fittings or whatever you call them there hanging out the bottom of the fuel tank. They don't appear to be leaking, which is fabulous. And we clear the motor. Looks like the gas tank's about 1/8 of an inch off the top of the motor, which is lovely. And most importantly, the fuel lines, they're not even close to touching anything. And you can see all of our fancy new heat shielding down there. You know, I'd say that's job done. I think let's buzz this thing around the yard so we can see what it feels like with power steering, and it'll also be the first time we'll run it around the yard under its own power since we, you know, started this project. Well, here we go. This is the first ride on Billy Badass under its own power around the yard since we started the project. And I am sitting on a towel because the frame's hard and it vibrates a lot. Try it again. There he is. Power steering, look at that. Okay, here we go. I think we have a little exhaust leak. It's to be expected. Now, we'll have to fix that. But here we go. That power steering, man, that's nice. Brakes do work, that's good. Try low range, yep. Low range works, reverse. Can we do a backwards burnout? Yep, we can do a backwards burnout. Go ahead and put this thing back in the garage. Yep, I think we're definitely leaning out. I do hear an exhaust leak ticking up here by the header. It's probably just the donut that goes from the Y pipe, you know, to the exhaust pipe, which means taking springs off with a spring tool I don't have. Anyway, that's for another day. Well, there you have it. That's a pretty big upgrade we've put into Billy with the power steering. That wasn't even an option until, like, I don't know, 2007 or 8 or 9 or 10, somewhere in there. But look, we've got an 03 700 with power steering. I think that's gonna do it for today. I appreciate y'all hanging out with me today. It was a lot of fun, a little bit of fighting, a little bit of arguing, a little bit of customization and improvisation, if you know what I mean. But we were able to get that thing put together, and it looks like it's gonna work fantastic. If you wouldn't mind, look, I really appreciate it. Do the subscribe thing and like, share, comment, all those things. Really means a lot to me, and I appreciate every one of you. In the meantime, ride safe, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye now.